call to order the meeting of the Audit Committee for March 28th of 2024. And again, I want to thank everybody for attending the meeting today. So item number 2, we need a roll call.
Okay, calling roll. Michael Abuzarol.
Here.
Trevor McLear. Here. Keith Libman. Here. Meltree Sharp. Katie Gallagher. Here. Okay. Are we missing? Oh, and Michael Chambers. Here. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, item 3, public comment. Monica, anybody, any comments for anybody?
No public comments at this time.
All right. So we had item 4. Initially, we had introduction and welcome. So initially, we thought we'd have a couple of new folks that might have come to today's meeting, but I guess through some conversations or scheduling issues, they're not attending. So we'll skip by that one. Item 5, the election of the chairperson. So this is the charter requires the audit committee to elect a chairperson in the first meeting of the year, which is where we're at right now. So the process is we need some nominations for the chairperson position, and then I guess a vote, I guess is how it would work. So nominations first.
In that case, I'll second.
Okay. Any other nominations for the position of the chairperson for the audit committee? Not doing it. Okay. So I guess it's a motion. So all in favor of electing Michael Abuzarol as a chairperson for the audit committee for 2024, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to the audit committee for your confidence in allowing me to chair this committee for an additional year.
Thank you for your continued service.
Thank you. So item 6, the approval of the minutes. We need a motion to approve the minutes for the December 14th of 2023 meeting. Second. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes for the December 14th, 2023 meeting, say aye. Aye. All right. So item 7, the member appointment. So we decided, I decided a while ago to continue to just have this as a standing item to make sure that and the county executive administration is focusing. So actually, my term is up at the end of 2024. So I'm just looking forward to having conversations with the county executive about my potential reappointment and my desire to be reappointed for future years. So it's just kind of a standing item, Katie. And so my term is up at the end of this year. Executive session, we're going to go into executive session, but I want to move this until 11 o'clock. So we will have a hard stop at 11 o'clock today to go into executive session. So we're on old business. So Monica, the follow-up items from the fourth quarter meeting.
Okay, so from the follow-up items from the fourth quarter meeting are as follow. There was the status of the bank. Status of the bank reconciliation. As per the audit committee meeting last time, this item is closed and will be monitored through the monthly update process. The next item on the follow-up was the Cuyahoga County Charter revisions related to unrestricted access to records. That is going to be discussed more at agenda item 9C. But at the last meeting, there was a request to send a formal request to the prosecutor's office. So we're going to discuss the letter that was drafted at agenda item 9C. The next item is the annual update to council. This was an item that was forwarded from our last annual update. There was a committee member that was requesting potentially some audit services. As no formal requests have actually been received from council for specific audit services, we're going to close this item out until further items are received, if any. So we did not receive any after multiple requests, to receive such during our annual audit process and subsequent to such. HR employee payroll review. This item, at the last meeting, there was a update given by the Inspector General's office, and the audit committee has agreed to invite the AIG back later in the year to provide an update on where they are with their continuous monitoring of the employee payroll, as well as the AIG agreed to provide the report to the committee when issued. For the next one, the follow-up item was the 2024 goals. There was a request to include a goal relative to the education of auditees on the process and value of internal audit. Specifically, a member of the committee requested that we consider a YouTube video, development of a YouTube video. That item will be addressed during our discussion at agenda item 10C when we discuss the 2024 goals. Budget update. At the last meeting, and the meeting before, the audit committee was made aware that the approved budget by the audit committee was not accepted by council. And so this item was requested to be put back on the agenda each time until there is appropriate resolution. So there's going to be a discussion of this at agenda item 9F. Audit surveys. At the last meeting, the audit committee requested that we provide audit surveys to the ACO on a continuous basis. Surveys received through 12/31 have been provided to the members. We also discuss surveys when we discuss our annual performance for 2023. Audit plan. It was a request to add a column to the audit plan that provides information on the risk rating. That audit plan was revised accordingly, and we'll discuss that at agenda item 10E. Those are all of the follow-up items. Any questions?
Okay, all right, thanks, Monica. So item 9B, the external audit, pre-audit meeting, the 2023 financial statement. So the purpose of this being on the agenda is I just want to have it reflected in the minutes that we actually conducted that meeting as one of our responsibilities. All the members attended the meeting except Mike Chambers, who wasn't able to attend, but I believe Lee Tucker attended in his place. So this is again just a reference in the minutes that we actually conducted that as part of our responsibility.
Chairman Abuzwal, if we could just read into the minutes the date that was held, please.
It was held on 2/29 of 24.
Thank you.
Hey, Sal. So item 9C, the recommendation for revision to the Cuyahoga County Charter. So Monica touched on this a little bit during the follow-up items, but just to do a brief summary on this and then kind of where we stand right now. So, you know, we've been challenged, I think, both as the committee as well as the department about, you know, the jurisdiction of the committee and the department, and then the department's actual access to work papers and records. So we had asked Monica many meetings ago, I guess, to put together kind of an initial draft of charter language that would address and hopefully rectify what we were trying to accomplish as a committee in regards to both of those topics. Monica provided a draft. I actually thought that the language within the draft actually kind of accommodated what it was that we were trying to accomplish. But I thought maybe there was an opportunity to do some streamlining of the language and or to try to find maybe an alternative, a legal alternative toward resolving our issues without it necessarily going back to the vote of the citizens of Cuyahoga County. So that was actually discussed during an audit committee meeting. The county executive then asked Monica to work with the law department to come up with solutions toward both of those items. Monica approached the law department. They indicated that it really wasn't their jurisdiction to do it. It needed to be the prosecutor's office to do the work. Monica approached the prosecutor's office to do the work. They then asked Monica to actually have this request come from the committee. So that's a long way of saying, in your packet of stuff is a letter that Monica drafted actually on behalf of, I guess I'm signing it on behalf of the committee, but it really then asked the prosecutor's office to do just what I summarized. take a look at the language take a look at the draft language that had been compiled, and, you know, through whatever legalese or creativity, I guess would be the right terminology, is there an opportunity to maybe streamline or tighten the language to make it maybe easier for the voters to understand, would be kind of request number one. And then request number two, you know, are there other legal alternatives that can be suggested to the audit committee that may accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, which then means we could remove it from the charter language. So the action here, and the reason it's on the agenda, is we need a motion to formally approve, I guess, me signing the letter on behalf of the audit committee to send to the prosecutor's office. But before we did that, are there any questions about what we're trying to accomplish? Everybody on board with that? If you know, in the past, we've circulated the draft of the revised language, and I think everybody on the audit committee provided kind of either your feedback on it or your approval on it. But if there is any reason for us to, you know, to revisit what has been created by Monica before we send it to the prosecutor's office, you know, say something now before we just go ahead and ask them to do what I'm asking them to do. So hopefully, yeah, Keith.
So just to be clear, because a red line of the charter with certain suggestions is attached, we're not asking for sign off from the prosecutor's office on this specific edits that we've processed. We're really asking for their help in finding another solution than those to which we presented, and the attachment is just sort of an example, a way to demonstrate the issue. Do I have that essentially correct?
Some parts. So there's two things. The first thing is, this was a templative document that we created, and you're asking the prosecutor's office to review that document and try to come up with succinct language that mirrors, that kind of consolidates the language in that document. That's the first thing. Okay. And then potentially to come up with any other alternatives. So that document would be what would go to voters and stakeholders if we needed a charter change. Outside of a charter change, we're asking them, what else can we do? So there are two things we're asking.
Right, so we've not drawn a red line, make this work or not. The way it's being presented, we're open to their suggestions.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I want to clarify that, but well, I'm not open to their suggestions on what we're trying to accomplish as a committee. Understood. Okay, but I am open to their suggestions on the language itself and alternatives. So, don't want you to recreate anything. I think I think as a committee we're comfortable with where we're at right now. So if you know, I don't want to be but if you guys decide you don't want to do it, then I would just take that language there. We go to the Charter Review Commission for ultimately their review to our voters. So, because I think it accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish as a committee. So we need a motion to approve the letter that's to be sent to the prosecutor's office for this purpose. Second, okay. All in favor of approving the letter that's in your packet, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. So item D, the schedule the update to council. So again, this is just kind of a standing item every year. Internal audit creates or develops a report that shows the work of the committee as well as the work of the department. Compile it initially in a report, send it to the county council, and then the director does a presentation to one of the subcommittees of the county council. So it's here just to talk about the potential date for that, and I don't know if we're premature or if we have a date yet.
We do not have a date yet. I mean, I think last year it got pushed back to September. You know, it's been as early as June, somewhere in July. So I would just say probably end of May, we figure out a date. They tend to meet every 2 weeks, so there's no date set yet. But you know, we are the term does expire for the current director on June 30th, I believe, right? So we might want to talk about that right now in terms of timing wise. Do we want to complete it before June 30th or not.
So everybody understand the question? So to be able to, and you say, when you say completed, you actually start completing the report and the presentation to the county council.
Correct. And I don't know from a scheduling perspective what time Monica gets in terms of being able to finish her report and having enough time to present it, so.
Yeah, how does that fit in within your timeline?
So typically, it comes before the committee, before we put it before the council, so that would be the June 13th meeting. So I would think that if the committee wants to approve that document as it has in the past, then it would need to be scheduled. If you want to do it pre-6:30, it would be that time period between June 13th and 6:30, because that would be the soonest I could get it to you for, unless you want to call a special meeting to do that, or, attach it to another meeting that you have scheduled.
I mean, do we have to Mark, do we have to formally approve that report that we're talking about? I don't know if you remember what it is. Does a committee formally have to approve it? Yeah.
I believe that's part of your charter.
That the audit committee approves it before it gets presented?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. I can check, though, and confirm that for you.
So I don't think we're going to schedule a special meeting just for that, right? I mean, we already got a couple of special meetings scheduled. So, so let's just stay within the same, and then we'll just figure out the presentation after June 30th.
Okay.
Okay. So item E, the approval of the 2024 meeting schedule. So you have the packet, or you have the document in your packet of information. I know a lot of work was done this year in trying to get the 2024 meeting schedule completed. So we started a process a few years ago of actually formally approving the meeting schedule. I hope that works with everybody.
Sad to report, the September 5th meeting does not work for me any longer. I'll be out of the country roughly August 30th to, I think it's September 16th.
Okay. So you're gonna be out of the office from when? Okay, so take a shot if you could, please, trying to reschedule the September meeting, but if you can't do it easily, or if, you're not getting good responses toward it, then we'll just keep the meeting date there, and we'll just miss you at that meeting, Keith. Okay. And it would be helpful when Monica's, and for myself, when we're trying to schedule these meetings, it's helpful to get responses from folks who can kind of get everything completed as we're trying to schedule those meetings. Sure. Okay. So 9F, the budget update. So again, Monica touched briefly on this during the follow-up items, and so this is the challenge, just my terminology, challenge that we're having in the 2024. So the budget that was approved by the audit committee is not the same budget that ultimately was recommended by the county executive and approved by the county council for the department. There are, in my terminology, some significant operational impacts to the department based upon the difference in those budget levels. And so, so there's really I think there's three documents that are in your packet. One is, kind of the summary document that reminds the audit committee of the operational impact based upon the differences in the budget for 2024, which is really the primary one that I want Monica to focus on. There's also a projection for the 2024 budget that Monica and her team created, that's where she's trying to do as best as she can with the resources that have been allocated by the county council through some kind of movements of those. But I think even with all of the work that's been done, there's still some operational impacts. And then at the last meeting, there was a request by one of the audit committee members about looking at a projection or looking at the actual results for 2023. So those are the three budget documents. So Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so the 2024 requested budget and to the council and the approved audit committee. Again, the significant impact is in our ability to perform IT services, IT audit services. The original request was for two things. One was contractual services for 2024 and some for 2025. And then there was also some budget dollars allocated for personnel. We wanted to kind of get somebody on board so that we wouldn't have to continue to do contractual audit IT work. So we wanted to try to get somebody on board in the latter half of the year. And so that position, which we do have the position was granted to us, but we do not have budget dollars now to match that FTE. So in essence, we no longer have that FTE, so we are unable to provide IT audit services. There's also going to be some impact in our there was some impact in our planned educational and CPE, as well as our IT services. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I talk about the actual 2024 budget. That was minimal in comparison to the monies that were needed to properly address the IT audit risk within the county. Just as a reminder, when we had our 2021 peer review, this was an item that came up that we needed to address, was IT within the organization, looking at IT risk and addressing IT risk. We will be doing, there was a carryover item, which we'll talk about later, to do the risk assessment. So because that item carried over, there is less impact for 2024, so that that audit was going to give us the population of things we needed to actually look at where our risk was from an IT perspective. And so we will discuss that later, but we're anticipating that being done by mid-year, which would mean we would have had the latter part of the year to get those services. And with the contract process that we have to go through, we probably wouldn't have, with current day, we probably would not have gotten IT contracts in place into the latter part of the year. So we might have gotten like one IT audit in for the year, given the rollover. So not as terribly impacting for 2024. However, for 2025, definitely we'd be impacting. As you will see when we talk about the audit plan, we did not schedule any IT audit services at all. We don't have the resources to do it. So other than the time that we're going to be spending doing what was supposed to be an outsource, which has now become a co-source arrangement for the ITGC risk assessment, we have no other IT audit work scheduled. So that is the impact of that. And looking at the 2024 and what we're doing to manage the dollars that we have been given, that is the 2024 budget monitoring document that you have in front of you. As you may be aware, we went to a new system, and that new system is going to cost us a little bit more than what we thought. So that's differential is about $3,000. And then we also will have a shortfall, as I described, in our education dues commitments. We are professionals that are required to maintain professional standards. So we're required to get CPE. We're trying to get those CPE as cheaply as possible. by doing, online and doing industry, our professional associations, which have lower cost items. We're fortunate to get some CPNE in from our software provider and the implementation of the new software that we have going on. So, but still in all, we had one particular individual staff members who has obtained his CPA. Yay. We are continuing to make sure that we are becoming certified and can appropriately do our jobs with the various certifications. And so as a result, per policy, we have to provide him with a reimbursement. So that's where some of that is coming from. In other years, we may not have that sort of expenditure, but we did this year, and that's almost $3,000. So these are the things that have come up. So we're going to have a shortfall right now, but again, and talking with councils, representatives, as well as the executive, we have been assured that, they will work with us to manage the shortfalls that we have throughout the year. Any questions?
With regard to the CPE, auditor, clerk, courses, most accounting for by clients to participate in their own internal. Reached out to you.
I can certainly ask that question. We're not aware of that, but certainly we can. I do think, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong though, but most of our team has already scheduled their CPE. Majority of them CPE. Yeah, typically our team tends to get there because of the way the industry works. Like, ALGA does their, as well as the AICP, the local chapter of Certified Internal Audit. The auditors, so they do their stuff kind of early, like in the March, May timeframe. So I think people just registered for their last. So probably by June, most people have it done. I'm normally the one that kind of lags and getting it because I have, a shortened ability to be able to flux with. But yeah, I think pretty much they're done, but we will check and see. We also try to do, free seminars and things as much as we can. I will also remind you, though, that we need to be careful about the type of CPE we gather. We kind of got just a verbal comment on that from a peer review last year. Last time we had it, and they understood because of COVID, but they highly recommend that we go more to industry in-person conferences in order to get the more applicable technical knowledge that we need to do the jobs that we do.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the IT audit impact and make sure that I have it in my head. So it was my recollection that the first step of the process was to engage somebody externally to perform the risk assessment and then come up with a series of recommendations about what the county could be doing different as far as their IT GC controls. And that contract is already in place and you have somebody performing that work. But then it was my understanding that the 2024 budget also included engaging somebody externally to take those recommendations that have been provided by the consultant doing the work already and then utilize the outside services to actually deal with the recommendations coming from the first study. Is that kind of my...
Somewhat correct. So yes, the current one that's being done, they will identify what we call gaps. And to that extent, that would be the responsibility of our IT. So our chief information officer would need to address those issues. No, we couldn't perform any audit work because there's a gap. There's no controls for us to test. But for those that are in place, those controls that they identify that are in place, they would come up with a population of different controls and work that we could do to then go and test. So we would then be testing IT controls. This review only identifies controls and control gaps. And to the extent that controls exist, there would need to be testing of that. That's what the 2024 budget was going to be for, is hiring somebody to start performing that testing.
So if the budget doesn't allow for internal audit to engage somebody to do that, then who's gonna do that within the county?
No one to my knowledge at this point. And if somebody else other than audit does it, it wouldn't be an independent assessment. So, I mean, I'm talking about internally. So you can hire somebody externally, which we were doing because we didn't really have the resident inside technical expertise to do that. We were trying to also hire someone to be able to do that on an ongoing basis to address that, because IT audit risk is going to be with us as long as we have systems.
And that's the impact of the 2025 budget, the hiring of the person to do the work.
It was 24 and 25 because we were going to try to hire at the end of 24. So we were going to have somebody in seat hopefully by end of 24.
So how does the county get value in the work that's the current consultant is actually performing
Well, I mean,
with the reduction in the budget?
you will at least be identifying what risk you have so that IT knows what risks they have, and what controls that are addressing those risks. And then they also know where they are falling short. So that is definitely something you should be doing. IT risk assessment should happen actually every year. We don't do it because we didn't have the in-house expertise to do it. So it's something that should be done just like our risk assessment that we do kind of a high level. We just always risk assess IT as high. But there are individual entities and things within IT, segments within IT, that may be actually at a lower risk that don't need to be tested. So that's what this risk assessment is doing. It's going deep diving into IT at the specific areas like software implementation and development, or logical access, things of that nature. It's looking at to ensure bring your own device kind of things. So all of these things are being looked at to see where the risk is, what controls are in place, and to the extent that controls don't exist, making them aware that the controls that don't exist or they're not adequate. And then for those that do exist, identifying a plan for us to audit those or to have those reviewed.
So as a committee, we thought that was very important, which is obviously why we approved it being in the budget initially. So I guess I don't want to lose sight of that because of the value that the work would provide for the county.
It's essential. I mean, I don't really see how in this day and age anyone's operating without IT audit occurring.
So with the thought process that maybe there's a possibility that the county may approve, the county council may approve an increase at some point in time. I mean, is the number that we initially approved in the budget for 2024 the right number, or could it be reduced a little bit?
It is no longer the right number, given the timeline that we're currently in. It is no longer a correct number. It would need to be revised to reflect where we are currently, current state. I would say that may be also another benefit to doing the risk assessment, is truly showing them, where there is the need for the resources, specifically what specific work products need to, or areas need to be looked at. And then, hopefully, I think our IT department has definitely, I know from a IT security standpoint, we're very much on point. I just don't, know where we are with some of our other areas that we are. So, trying to understand that. So I think that will bring value and maybe support the budget request a little bit more once we get the risk assessment.
Okay, so you're suggesting to wait until the risk assessment's completed to then maybe come back with a revised potential budget request to the committee?
I think at the next meeting, you probably need to have a revised one. The risk assessment will be well down the way, if not finished. But I think that you should continue to press to have this, we are definitely an IT-centric organization, and we should have IT audit services.
So I'm wondering if there isn't another route to go, given the difficulty around issues when they're called budget and the implications of what's provided to one county department vis-a-vis what's provided to others. Is there any way to frame this, rather than being part of our budget, as being some type of special appropriation necessary to serve the county, and sort of get it out of people's heads that this is expansion of a budget of a department as opposed to a necessary project that has county-wide implications? I realize it's dressing up the same request in different clothes, clearly, but might that overcome perhaps some of the objections to expanding the budget that we've received?
I will ask Ms. Gallagher if you would kind of give us your insight on that.
Okay.
Or twice a month.
Yeah. The other thing I'm not really sure of, but from what I recall, is there is the ability by charter for us to charge back services. I think we kept that in there. I don't think we would like to do that, but looking at all.
I was just going to add to that, Mike. I mean, that doesn't solve this problem, because you still only have a certain appropriation requirement. You can charge it all back, but that doesn't. What's that? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will say on the budget, by the end of the year, I mean, you have.
Can you use the microphone? I just got
Sorry.
a text saying I
Yeah.
can't hear on YouTube.
I mean, the way the budget works is you have salaries, we have two line items, salaries and everything else. So the way I view it, and Walter views it, is you may be short down below, but by the end of the year, if you have excess salary money, we'll move it down and vice versa. So to me, it's interchangeable. I think it's a little early at this point in time. I don't know what the total cost once again, you're looking for. But to me, if you lose a person, that's going to be money. It's going to take months to fill. That becomes available as part of the budget, if that makes sense. That's how we view it. And then if you're general fund and we have another general fund entity that's over, we can always reallocate within general fund, different agencies.
Mr. Chairman, can I just suggest that when Monica finishes her reprojection for the IT services for this year, that she notify us and then request it of the county council at that time? I don't know that we need to wait for any approval from this committee unless there's a motion that's necessary now.
I guess that would be a legal question. So we've already formally approved a higher amount. So I guess as long as Monica's not requesting something that's in excess of the amount we've already approved, she probably doesn't have to come back to the committee.
Mark, what do you?
you can authorize Monica to pursue that within the parameters that you've already set out.
Is everybody okay with that as the approach? Okay, so between now and whenever, and I wouldn't just focus on the IT, I mean, if we're gonna go back to the county council.
Understood,
Okay,
yes.
and if it's a lesser amount than we initially requested, that's fine, with the explanation of timing being if you have another solution, like maybe you're gonna have available dollars in the salary line item, I mean, that could be a potential solution too, so.
All right, wonderful. Would you like me to go over the 2023 that was requested, or for sake of time, would you like to just move?
I forgot whoever requested it.
It was Ms. Sharp. You're good? Okay, wonderful.
Okay. Let me just jot something down. Okay. So then the next item on the agenda is the confirm independence of audit personnel. So similar to what we're going to talk about under 10B for the committee, is a similar process that the Internal Audit Department does for their employees. So Monica, you want to talk about this?
Absolutely. So as is required by our audit charter, as well as professional practice, each year we confirm the independence of each staff member. We have done that for 2024. We also do that on an engagement by engagement basis. So, but for our overall independence, there were no issues to report to this committee. For resident member independence, that is also per the charter. Any independent member needs to confirm annually their independence. We received word from the Inspector General, who receives those disclosures, that there were no issues or concerns. Everyone did comply with this, and that there were no items to disclose.
Okay. I just want to thank everybody for completing those forms timely. So item 10C, the Director of Audit Annual Performance. So this is both to talk a little bit about the 2023 goals, results, and then the 2024 proposed goals, which ultimately the committee has to approve. So I'll turn that over to Monica.
Okay, so last year, the Audit Committee approved 2023 performance goals measurements, which are primarily for the Director of Audit, but also overall, the performance of the department is kind of my performance as well. So these were the performance goals measurements that were approved. This is the results of that. So the number one was obtain positive feedback from process owners for each engagement and key stakeholders annually, as evidenced by achieving ratings other than disagree or strongly disagree on 70% of feedback received. So I want to mention that these are SMART goals, so specific, measurable, achievable, timely, and so we measured by the survey report summary, which was attached and to this. And when you looked at the survey report summary, you'll see that we actually received 95% positive feedback rate, which is not your norm. Internal audit typically is not always well received. We have a lot of times have to educate people on the value of audit and desensitize them to, what they think may be some, negative things about what we're coming in to do, that, we are gotcha people, but we use a very collaborative approach to our audit, and it has been proving, as you see with the feedback, to be good. So 95% positive feedback ratio, so we met that. Monitoring timely and appropriate resolution of audit findings through consistent use of newly established issue resolution process, as evidenced by the semi-annual updates to the audit committee. This is a two-part thing, December 22nd and June 23rd. So what's due in June is for the first half of the year. What's due in June? Yes, first half of the year.
That's what it used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, before it was report on the first half in June. However, that doesn't really give us the ability to actually show through June 30th. So we've kind of shifted that to be report on the first half of the year in the third quarter and report on the second half of the year in the first quarter.
But for 2023, we reported it December 22nd and June 2023. So for those two, we reported at the 12/8/22 meeting and the 7/8/23 meetings. So that was completed. Then achieving an audit completion rate of at least 70% of the approved 2023 audit plan inclusive of revisions. So this metric was, we had a 68% completion rate was achieved. I have here, there's a note that this goal should be modified based upon the director availability. I included a report for you guys to look at so that you can see where that modification. So 70% was based upon full availability of my time. I was not available, as you know, due to personal HR, family-related issues. So this goal would need to be modified. If you modify it based upon the availability, the modification rate would be 59%, not 70%. So using the modified rate of 59%, a 68% completion ratio would have this goal have been completed. Developing cohesive relationships throughout the organization and a rapport with council members as determined by the regular establishment of touch points throughout the year, as well as receipt of requests for assistance and feedback obtained from surveys or other bona fide sources. So there were a number of meeting notices, agendas, emails, and surveys. The listed here, we did the presentation to council for 9/19, so that was the first one. We established regular touch points with Katie Gallagher and received 7 documented requests for assistance and attended several council meetings over the allotment of 6, although that too was modified to 5 based upon the availability of the director. So those are the 2023 performance goals measurements. As per the calculations, they were all completed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I don't know what, as far as if there's any committee action required, so I'll just express personally, there are many reasons why goals might not be met. All kinds of variables. Availability of the director is one of them, but there could be many more. Personally, I reject the notion that the goal should be modified based on one variable among all of the reasons that goals aren't achieved. So again, I don't know that there's any formal action to whether we're being asked to adopt the reduced goal or not, but at least you know how I feel about it.
Okay. All right, you want to go to 2024 goals?
Absolutely. So go to the next one. Okay. So 2024 goals, these are the goals that are being presented to you for 2024. They are pretty much mirroring what we had established for 2023, with the exception of adding, as per the follow-up item that we discussed, number 4, promote the value of internal audit and increase awareness of DIA's role throughout the organization as determined by, one, a revision or establishment of a web presence, and then B, formal establishment of the Getting to Know You audit campaign via a plan detailing specific initiatives to increase knowledge about internal audit. For example, the YouTube video, periodic internal articles, et cetera. Plan will include description of initiative and timeline for execution. So the, there's currently, and has been for the last probably 2 years now, we've been doing things kind of on an informal basis to try to gain awareness, increase knowledge of internal audit. So we are recommending that we formally establish that and provide a plan detailing specific initiatives, one of which would be the YouTube video, as well as submission of periodic internal articles into the Cuyahoga County getting to know you. So that's the number 4. So that's what's being added. Any questions?
I do have a couple of questions, maybe comments. Because we're leaving the audit completion rate the same when it was modified last year. So either the circumstances are going to be different this year so that we can achieve that goal, or we're going to create a solution to bridge the gap to achieve that goal. And if we are going to create a solution, is that budgeted for? So I know I'm like a ton of things back to back, but I hope you catch my drift.
So the question is, are we going to create a budget for?
Yeah, so we didn't achieve the same goal in 2023 because of the director's
Availability.
So either that availability is going to change so that we can achieve the goal, or we need to modify the goal. Or if the goal is going to be the same, then what solutions are we going to put in place to make sure that we achieve the goal this year? And if we are going to put a solution in place, are there budget dollars required or dollars required for that solution?
Very good question. So some of this is I'll say protected information, right, from a discussion standpoint, in terms of my availability. I am not sure or certain. I cannot predict. Many things, there are many things happening currently with my elder care situation. So I can't say at this point in time what my availability would be. 70% is an appropriate threshold given historical information as to what this department was achieving, as well as the expected plan that we have. So when we talk about the plan, I can show you how, this impacts the plan, the 70% completion ratio. Normally, a completion ratio of 90% is probably about the max that you would get in a fully functional, smoothly running department. As you may be aware, we have a hindrance in that we do not, our audit population is not on a functional basis. And this was something that was looked at by the peer reviewers. So, I mean, that's really going to be, at the discretion if you want to change it or modify it. I couldn't tell you what to modify it to because I don't know what the availability is. As it relates to a solution for that, if you would like to backfill, any time that I'm not available, then that would be the solution. Again, more kind of sensitive information though, in terms of, your executive session and what you've got going on in terms of your search for, you know, so again,
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to answer you, but a lot of this is couched
And
with.
I don't think it requires an answer, I just think it's a thought process around it. To Keith's point, like, I think 70% is low. And so if we have a goal of 70%, I don't want to look at I don't want to come in 2025 and say, we didn't achieve the goal. And so we're 2 consecutive years not achieving the goal, so we need a solution. So I don't want to prescribe that solution. I'm just saying, if there's going to be constraints on time, then we should be considering what that solution is so we can achieve the goal.
Understood.
Yeah.
Teresa, just, so it sounds to me like the crux of it is that if there are availability issues, anyone in the department, that Monica delegate or reallocate as needed. Thank you.
All right, so my other question too on the goals, it pertains to 4B, you talked a little bit about it. So you're coming up with a plan to achieve the objective of this particular goal. I'm assuming you're gonna present that to the audit committee for review and.
Yes,
I don't think-
at the time it's done, it will do. I would just like to address what Committee Member Tallarico just said about delegate. So when it comes to delegation, because of professional standards, there are some things that cannot be delegated. And that is where the problem comes in at, is because there has to be a sign-off by the director to meet professional standards. So that would mean we would need to change all roles within the department. So it's not as simple as a delegation. I just want you to understand and know that work is appropriate, delegated. We also don't want to overload the staff, but there are certain things that have to have director sign off by professional standards. And that's where the issue comes into play.
Mr. Chairman, the sign-off you mentioned, Monica, are you telling me that can't be delegated or can't be authorized by this committee to provide for a backup?
Well, it would have to be a backup that would have the appropriate knowledge and expertise to do it. I'll give you an example. If the way we're currently structured, the staff performs work, the manager reviews that work, and then the director does the high-level review and signs off on that work. If you want to either put somebody else in as a director, then you could do that, like I said, backfill the time that I'm not available. Or if when you're talking about me delegate, I can only delegate to the staff that I have. So then that would mean someone would need to be able to move into that managerial level so that the manager can become director, and we don't have the bandwidth to have that happen. There's a lot that the manager does and is accountable for. And we are currently training our seniors to take on more responsibility, and they are and have, but we just don't have the bench strength to do what you're asking. We are a very lean team. We have 6 members, and we do a lot of audits.
I'm not going to suggest I have an answer, Monica.
Yeah.
But I'm going to suggest that we need to have that plan in place. I don't like to use the getting hit by the bus example, but I like to use the example where somebody hits the lottery and they're gone. We never see them again. So in those instances, we have to have a plan. Yeah.
And in those instances, I think professional standards would require you to put somebody else in as interim.
All righty, so I want to go back to all good conversation. So the plan that we're talking about, when do you think you'll have that to the audit committee?
Oh, I'm not really certain at this point in time.
The plan that Sal's talking about, the plan that I'm asking about.
Yeah, on that. So I'm thinking maybe September's meeting.
I just don't know how much time that gives you then to implement it in 2024.
Well, this is not a plan to be implemented in 2020. This is just a start. This is a probably 2 to 4 year plan. I mean, this is a huge campaign and plan that should be, I mean, you start some things we may start going ahead and trying to do the web presence, to the extent that we have. Again, this would be on top of the audit work that we're currently doing, which we're just talked about having constraints on. So, yeah, so it's a plan, and it's to be implemented over a period of time. That's why I said there will be timelines with each of the initiatives that would say when those initiatives would be implemented. Mhm.
That's what you're saying will be done in September?
Right.
Designing that plan?
Yeah,
with the
designing that plan.
timeline?
And there would be some things probably on it that we are currently, that we're in process with, and may have a date of 2024, probably will have a date of 2024. But the plan itself is what I'm hoping you would appreciate is a plan that is going to span over a couple of years, because it's a major shift or change, and there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a very comprehensive plan to be able to push out knowledge about internal audit and raise the level of exposure of internal audit. So not just something quick and here you go,
Understood. I just want to express one concern, and I see you over there, Keith. I just want to make sure that this work, and we're adding another goal, and I guess I'm going back to my concern about our inability to achieve last year's goal, and now we're adding another goal. So I just want to make sure that this doesn't distract us from doing making the main thing, and
Understood.
achieving the 70% that we're setting out to achieve.
Correct. But this was something that the audit committee requested be added to the 2024 goals.
Okay.
I'm a little bit out of my area of expertise, but I've been around a lot of businesses and organizations that create informational materials for their constituents. I completely agree that a rollout over a period of time resonates with me. I think a high-level plan with bullet points and timing should not be a big time consumer. And I also think that there may be quite a bit of the materials, whether it's video, collateral materials, or whatever, that are in the public domain that we probably don't need to create, at best modify. There are many other organizations, governmental and not, that need to educate their constituents about internal auditing, and some of that may be available, albeit it may take some time to search for it. But maybe we see how I want to say this. Maybe it's okay to build a Chevy and not a Cadillac to get started.
Okay, so thank you for that, Keith. So that you are aware, we have been, as I said, doing this on an informal basis, and to our surprise, as probably yours, there is no current video of sorts. In fact, I'm the one chairing the committee for the ALGA, because I went to ALGA, which is the Association of Local Government Auditors, and said, hey, does anyone have anything like this? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, we need to do one for ALGA. So I'm chairing that committee to get a YouTube video for that. And so, yeah, to much surprise, there is not that YouTube video. There are other articles out there, you're correct. We have those, and we just want to do it in a targeted, pushed out way.
So it's encouraging to me that your association may produce this, and that's on the association's dime and not the county's, so that's great.
Absolutely, and I was very instrumental in helping them to get to that, that they're going to try to do that on behalf of everyone versus us just doing it.
Okay, so I want to kind of wrap this topic up. So I think we need a motion to approve the 2024 goals that have been presented by Monica, or if they need to be revised, but I don't know. Either way, we gotta approve something here, but, so what do we want to do? Approve them as they've been presented?
Or what would you like to revise? Just if you let me know, I'd be happy to revise anything. If you'd like to take that number 4 off, as, you know, Ms. Sharp has said, it does weigh into the time that is going to be required to keep engagements at 70%. I mean, but again, we had some other goals other than the 70% that we were able to meet. So, you know,
Sounds
we'll
like-
try.
It sounds like you're saying that really the only thing that you're gonna do in 2024 is develop the plan,
Yeah, that,
right?
yeah,
And-
but we
and
may
that's in
do some
September.
things, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would maybe suggest that we say, be specific, like if all we're gonna do in 2024 is develop the plan, then maybe we should just put, develop the plan and not promote with all of these things as goals. It's just a suggestion.
Maybe we can make it a little bit clearer, but it says formal establishment of the Getting to Know You campaign via a plan. So, we also have A, which is the web presence, so we can, that's separate from the plan, so we were gonna try to do that as well, so we can take that out and just do a plan, if you'd like. Well, I'm trying to accommodate the audit committee who, you know, requested that this be put into goals, particularly the YouTube video, as per our follow-up. And then also when, you know, I met with the pre-meetings, you know, I was asked to put more weight around specific things that we were going to do to actually mention those things. So
So my suggestion, I do want to wrap it. So my suggestion is these goals have been, not only in 2024, but previous years, just all I think was simply added to this was the YouTube video and some specific examples. So I don't consider I don't personally consider either one of these items to be a significant allocation of time. And Monica, as I understand, when you're coming up with the actual audit plan itself, you don't include your hours in the workload allocation.
I do.
Okay, we'll get to that document, and we'll figure out how that fits in. So, so because of that, it's been on the goals for a few years now. I'm gonna suggest we approve the goals as they are here. If there's a need for these to be modified during the course of 2024, then Monica can certainly come back to the audit committee. But I think these are not, as I understand them, to be a crazy allocation of time for her. Maybe doing the YouTube video would be, but not necessarily coming up with the plan. So I'm going to suggest we approve the goals as they have been submitted. So all in favor of approving the 2024 goals as submitted by the director, say aye. Aye. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so item 10D, so I think there's kind of good news on this one. So Monica, I'll turn this one over to you.
Yes, so ALGA has what's called the Night 10 Awards. Each year, they solicit nominations for those awards that meet specific criteria. We had one audit report that met that criteria that was submitted, and that was our HR recruitment, retention, and hiring report. That has been submitted and is being considered for the Night 10 Award. If we are chosen as a winner of that award, they would require us or request us to travel to the regional conference, which would be in Seattle. And henceforth, the reason why this is on your agenda, we would need that travel to be approved as per policy in advance of us actually doing that travel. Now, ALGA will pay, they will supplement most of the cost, but there are costs that would not be, meals and things of that nature would not be covered for. So this is why this is on the agenda, and that's it.
Just a question, what was involved, time or cost-wise in submitting the nomination to Alga?
No cost. In terms of time, it was a couple of hours of my time to be able to thoroughly answer the questions as to how we met the criteria that was required for each one.
And maybe it's somewhere in the materials, how much time and what budget is being requested to attend the conference?
So that is, it's going to be negligible. Again, they will pay for airfare, they will pay for hotel. It was going to be just meals and expenses, expenditures.
And time?
So the time, oh yeah, so the time is, the conference is May 5th and 6th. So, I mean, but that time is time that we were already planning to attend the conference. So everyone in our department is signed up for the conference. So, other than travel time, it would just be the time for CPE.
So do I understand if we do win the award, they're going to pick up some costs that we've already budgeted?
Yeah, actually, they will pick up, well, the registration, I'm not sure of. I'll have to find out, but I know they will.
But
they
some
will
of the travel-related costs.
Yeah, travel, but we weren't going to travel. So if we don't get the award, we're not going to travel because we're trying to make, normally we would have, but because of budget, we're not. This time they've offered a remote option and we're going to all attend remote.
Now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Monica, but to Keith's point though, it is more time if you now go out there though, right? I mean, we were just talking about the lack of time, but flying out there and versus logging into a Zoom would require more time. And I think that's where Keith was trying to get at, how much more time would be going out there, would it take? It can't be the same, I mean.
Well, in terms of time that's charged out, I mean, it's the same. It's more personal time that you would have to travel. Typically, we don't get paid for our travel time.
Who would be attending the conference?
It would depend. It really would. It's either going to be myself and Tom or just Tom.
Okay, so the reason it's on the agenda, so there's the good news part of it, which is the award, but then we got the financial challenges and the time challenges. The reason it's on the agenda is a few years ago, the audit committee wanted the right to approve any out-of-state travel for the department. So really, I think she's,
Yeah, I'm just trying to comply. And of course, prior to any travel, we'd have to go through the travel of doing exactly what you are requesting in terms of getting approval of all of the, and that would go through Mike Chambers as you've delegated it to go through. So getting approval of the travel cost and all of that nature. So all of that would be known to the audit committee prior to such occurring.
When do you think you know the award?
We should really know, like, any day now, like, because they're coming out with different, this person's, the person of the year, and so they're coming out with, so we will know.
So do we want to approve this request contingent upon the department receiving the award and limit it to one or two people to travel? I mean, we could be.
Chambers here, I would recommend that because the sooner she books, the cheaper it's going to be. If we wait too long, we might get increased fares. So I would give her the authority, Monica and whoever, the authority.
So the potential motion is to approve out-of-state travel for up to 2 people within the department, contingent upon the county receiving the award.
So moved.
Okay. Is that good for?
That's good.
Okay.
You will go through the
Oh,
travel,
absolutely we'll go through.
Because we can cancel with the travel agent. So,
Yeah,
good. All right.
absolutely. We'll follow all policy.
Second.
So all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And I guess that's also contingent on the finalization that Alga's paying for the.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If they're not paying, we're not going. We don't have the budget.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to review and approve the annual audit plan and report. So this was initially presented to the audit committee last meeting, and we approved the risk assessment. I always thought we had given tentative approval to the audit plan so the department can move forward. But anyways, it's on the agenda for purposes of now formal approval. So there's a few documents for, in your packet of stuff. So Monica?
Okay, so there's the approval of the 2024 audit plan, and then there's actually annual audit plan report. So the annual audit plan report is a summarization of what occurred for 2023, and then it also tells you what we're requesting to be approved for 2024. So, in going through this document, the plan, audit plan report, you have your 2023 engagements. If that's on page 4. What's that? They have it in there. They have it in there. But on page 4, this is kind of just tells you where the department stood as it related to the 2023 plan. Total engagements were 19. We released 11 engagements. In progress as of January 24 was 4. Engagements not started was 1. There were no engagements removed last year, and we had 3 engagements that were deferred or on hold. Those engagements were the contingent audit for the ethics. The committee did not provide approval last year to move forward with that contingent engagement. It's also on this plan as contingent. There was also the ERP implementation assessment that was recommended as a consulting service that was not approved due to budget. So that's been deferred. And then the audit tracker as the semi-annual audit semi-annual tracker process, as Josh alluded to earlier. Normally we have 2 engagements that are due in the year, but there was a change and we requested the ability to move it to align with the ability to get all of 1231 in. So you'll be seeing that at this audit meeting instead of having seen it at the 1230, at the December 17th or 14th, was the 14th meeting. So that is your 2023 engagements. On page 5, there's a list of all engagements that were released as well as in progress. On page 6, we talk about just an overall performance for 2023. DIA's overall percentage of completion rate increased by 19% from the previous year. Completion rates remain impacted by the availability of the director FMLA leave. The average time to produce deliverables, which is our cycle time, increased slightly from prior year as a result of the director's availability. Resource utilization remains steady and at a normal level of within 5% of the achievable max rate of 60%. The coverage of the audit universe is unchanged, which is at 41%. As a reminder, Keith, you, when I first came on board, had concerns about this. We were at 8%. We are now at 41% coverage ratio. The audit coverage remains at 41%, and 67% of all areas identified as being high risk. So anything that's high risk, we're covering 67%, and overall 41%. So that is great coverage. That means we will actually be able to cover everything within the 3 to 5 year plan that the committee has requested that we do. This represents a cumulative change overall of 400% since 2019. Such advancement is the result of several changes. And then on page 7, you have the key performance indexes, which shows you everything from the percentage of completion, resource utilization, as well as cycle times and BVA. Now, I would like to point out that in terms of the budget variance analysis, previously this was a concern and still is a concern, as we are at a negative 57%. But previously that was a negative 503%. Last year went to 64% negative variance, unfavorable variance, I'll say. We're now at an unfavorable variance of 57%. So we are improving. As the peer reviewers mentioned, or in their results, they said this actually will continue to occur until we have functionally cycled through all of the areas. As you recall, most audits that we do are first-time audits, not gone through them before. So we have that curve because we're not set up on a functional basis from an audit population perspective. So it's really hard to gauge what our budget hours are going to be, but we're getting better at it, and we're also doing much more things to improve our efficiency, but just really trying to get to know all that there is to know about the various different areas in the county, and that's work that hasn't been done before. So as we cycle through, we'll get greater efficiencies there, and hopefully that rate will continue to go down. We have seen positively that there was one audit that we had a positive variance with, right? Yeah. So we were under budget for the first time and doing this work. So we are definitely moving in the right direction.
Monica, I have a quick question. You said resource utilization remains steady and at a normal level of within 5% of the maximum achievable rate of 60%.
Correct.
And maybe I misunderstood you earlier when you said the maximum achievable rate was 90%?
Two different KPIs. So one is an audit completion ratio, which tells you the percentage of audits that we get complete versus what we planned. This one is actual use of our resources. So the availability of resources. So there's 2080 hours for any typical employee of an organization. For the county, what we have found out is that our max, because of administrative time, county has generous benefits in terms of holidays, times off, but then we also have our administrative time for CPE and things of that nature. So we have done it both ways. We've done a detailed review, and 60% is about the max. So 2080 times 60%, that's the max that we would probably be at, and that's with everybody working and really exceeding the, not taking all their vacation time, all of that kind of sort of things. So 60%, that's what that is. Okay, all right. And typically that has, as you can see, in 2018, it was 55%, 2019, it was 54%. It dipped down in 2020, which we know was pandemic, to 47%. And then 2021 was 57, again, 2022, 58. And we stay around that 57, 58. Within 5% of that 60% is considered to be good.
So we have a hard stop in a half an hour. So
okay. All right, so any other questions relative to 23? So now looking at 24, we presented at the 12 December meeting a recommended draft. Once we got the committee's input, because I understand we can only get your input during the meeting, we got your input, we took that into consideration, we then met and had several meetings with several stakeholders, directors, things of that nature, to be able to get their input into the plan. And so my job is to present a risk-based plan to you initially. So that's what was presented in December, was a risk-based plan using the methodology, the cyclical methodology that you agreed to or approved. I presented a plan to you that said these are the audits based upon the risk assessment and the cyclical methodology that these are what we plan to do. Now I'm coming back to you and saying, after discussion with the audit committee, after discussion with stakeholders, directors, executives, as well as right-sizing it for resources, this is the audit plan that I'm presenting to you for your approval. So the audit plan for 2024, there, as we talked about earlier, were 4 audits that rolled over from 2023, as well as the IT General Controls Review, which was supposed to be fully outsourced, but there was a co-sourcing that happened to occur based upon the vendor that we chose. So there are 5 audits that were in progress as of 1/1. We actually have completed the hotel motel one. The IT General Controls Review, we still are in the process, and we'll talk about that one a little later. But we have actually, we are now started, and we'll give this update, but we did start the development community. All these audits have been started and are kind of really far down the process. But at the beginning of the plan year, when we're setting the plan for plan resources, this is the status as of 12/31. These are the hours that we were estimating were needing to be able to, we would need to have in order to complete the work. So that was the rollover. For plan audit for 2024, we have this contingent review, which is the ethics review. That was deferred from the 2022 plan. We would need 225 hours to do that. And you'll see in my calculation right now that would be, we could do it, but it would help, it would probably roll, we'd have to roll something else over. But again, that's still contingent. It's something that the audit committee, I believe, needs to make a decision on. It was something that we got a finding on from the peer review that we needed to look at this particular item specifically, and so henceforth it's on the audit plan as per the peer review recommendation. Number 2, the audit committee has asked us to defer this again this year, so I am recommending it for deferment. Then we have microfilm, we have criminal justice, we have animal shelter. All of these were deferred from the 2023 plan. I'm recommending that they stay on the plan this year. For number 6, the sheriff's office, law enforcement protective services, I'm recommending that we defer this for 2 reasons. One is resources. The other is that the county is currently going through a strategic revision to the strategic goals. And so this audit focuses on strategic review of how the sheriff's office aligns with the targets for the county strategic plan. So this would not be able to be done until probably later this year, rolling over to the next year anyway. So we don't have the hours, so I'm recommending it be deferred. The sheriff's office contract compliance, I'm recommending that be performed this year, as well as the clerk of courts, collections and enforcement support. I am also recommending deferment of the opioid settlement compliance, and that is being recommended, one, for resources, but even more importantly, in meeting with that chief as well as the department, they have already kind of procured, or were in the process, way down in the process of procuring external resources to address this very thing that we were going to audit. They just were not aware that internal audit actually does that kind of work and review. So now they're aware, and what they asked us to do was, and which we've done already, is help them in the procurement process. So we reviewed the RFP for them and provided some very good feedback to them on the RFP. And so that's where we are with that. So that one we'll defer it probably to at least next year, if not the year thereafter, after they get their work done. And then, we'll see what we'll do based upon the work that was done there. And then the Office of Reentry, that is simply just based upon not enough hours. And we'll look at the calculation in just a few minutes. And then the issue tracker, the risk assessment, and the quality assessment, these are things that we are required to do by professional standards. And so those are the hours. I will draw a note that the issue tracker is more hours because we no longer have that resource that we used to have in terms of the executive liaison. That work has kind of been brought in-house where we are managing the audits and keeping them breathing with the departments now. So there's additional work that we're performing, and that reflects that. Additionally, the risk assessment, we're going to be doing a deep dive every 2 to 3 years. We have to do a deep dive where we go into detail with the risk assessment, not just doing the questionnaires, where we actually go out and meet with people. So that reflects in the hours in there for that. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is we have hours in there for what we call DIA Project Excellence. This is always an area where we leave time for us to improve ourselves. The majority of these hours this year are being increased based upon our teammate conversion. So we are updating our teammate system, and we are having to do work relative to supporting that conversion. So there were hours last year, but there's hours this year as well for us to be able to do our teammate conversion. So that is the plan. In talking about resources, so how I right-size this plan. So the audit plan, basically, you see the budgeted hours that were listed here on the audit plan for your approval. So what I did this year is something that is done kind of in the background before, but what I tried to do is pull this out for the audit committee to perhaps give you better insight into how our overruns, the 57% unfavorable budget overrun that I talked to you about earlier, how that plays a part into the audit plan and how that's planned for. So with a 57% budget variance that we know we typically are having, that's what's that yellow column is that 57%. If you multiply 400 by 57%, it's 228 hours. And so for all new audits, we have done that. That's what our average overrun rate is, so we might as well plan for it. That gives us 1,967 more hours. So when you look at the available project hours, and here for this calculation, because this is talking about actual engagements, when I return back to the report, you'll see how my time plays into this. So this is just 5 resources for actual, because I spend time on it, but my time is nowhere as significant as the team's time. So in the past, historically, they've not put that into this budget at this level. It's put into the plan, and I'll show you where it's put into the plan at. So in calculating the budgeted hours, you have 5 staff for 2080, which is 10,400 hours. That's 60% rate, Ms. Sharp. That is what the availability is. So you have 6,240 hours available. That would give us, with the 7,415 and the 1,967, that gives us an internal resource shortage of 3,000 hours. As I said, the contingent audit, I added that back because that typically is something that is at the discretion of the audit committee. That would give us 2,916 hours to be covered. I'm recommending deferment of the sheriff's office, the opioid settlement, and the Office of Reentry. That gives us back those hours. So then our shortage is actually 1,660. As stated previously, the audit completion ratio that we're targeting is 70%, which means 70% of our plan will not get done in the current year, which if you take this, and I use actually 25%, a lower rate. So 25% would give us a planned carryover of 1,560 hours, which means we're balanced. So if we only expect a completion ratio of 70%, then we would have appropriate resources because at least 1,560 hours will be carried over, really more than that, but for 30%. But that's the 1,560, so then we're only short 100 hours. Now, in planning and doing resource planning for audits, you want to maximize, which means stretch your resources for effective planning. We recognize that things do happen, things occur, and that's why throughout the year it is the responsibility of the audit director to come back to this committee as needed and make any recommendations or adjustments to plan if these resources tend to change. And that's where that will occur. In the past, we've come and we said we need to defer this audit or that audit based upon whatever is occurring. And that would be how that would be handled in the future. So that effectively is the resource calculation. Let me take you back to the audit plan so that you can see how these hours and how my hours actually get put into the plan. So if you go to page 12, page 12 has total audit plan hours. And the total audit plan hours is actually 10,682. What you will see is my hours is that 1,300 that represents other audit services there. That's how it was done in the past when I got here. That's how we continued to do it. And so that 1,300 represents my 60% of hours. Actually, it's a little bit more than 60%. But it's what was being planned before, and so I continued what was on the plan. So 10,682, that is an over allocation. And so with the adjustments that I've asked you to make, which is to defer these audits as well as the contingent audit, it gives us an adjusted hours of 9,200, approximately 9,200 hours. And that would result in about 1,660 hours for carryover into the next year.
May I ask a couple questions? And I'm going to say, because I'm real cognizant of the hard stop Mike has, that perhaps this will be answered at another time. Mm-hmm. But I want to make sure I understand on the schedule that shows the estimated overrun. What we're saying is historically we've had 57% overruns, so we do a budget of what we think an audit will take, line item by line item, function by function. And now we're anticipating in the plan that we'll have that historic overrun. I might suggest that maybe we need to look at the way we budget, and if we're really going to spend that time in order to create accountability, we ought to relook at the budgets and see where it needs to be built in. But I guess I just sort of like to go on the record. I don't think, I think there's a breakdown in either the budgeting or the expectations. If we go in expecting that we're going to have 57% overruns, and I also have a concern that a 70% projected completion rate is a relatively low bar. It may be realistic based on our resources, but it shouldn't be confused with what should be expected of a highly functioning and adequately funded department. I put those two things together, and I think we need to continue to reinforce to administration and council, whoever is responsible for allocating the budget, that we cannot do an adequate job with the resources we have, either by virtue of inadequate dollars or other considerations that make hours unavailable. So you don't need to respond now. You can decide how that should be reflected in the minutes, but as we pass any, if we're asked to pass on a plan, I wouldn't want to, I don't want to vote against passing a plan, but I do want to reflect that there's room for improvement.
And I'd just like to, again, remind the audit committee that this was specifically addressed in the 2021 review by the peer reviewers, and their recommendations were that we move to a functional-based audit population, and that would require a considerable amount of resources, which we don't have. So, again, understood, not much that we can do, and we're doing what we can. Now, I will say again, as I said earlier, as we cycle through, we'll get better on the estimations, which we are showing that we have improved. Again, we started at 500% in 2019 variance, and now we're at 57 unfavorable. So I think we're improving.
I guess my comments, I think they kind of mirror Keith's. I guess just philosophically, I mean, I get the schedule, but there's a significant amount of estimated overruns that we're putting into the audit plan. I guess I would just ask the question, why aren't we trying to do a little bit better in making sure that we're meeting the budgeted hours versus the budgeting for this overrun? I mean, it's kind of a little bit of, I don't know how you guys do it in the auditing industry, but it doesn't seem intuitive to me. And I also don't necessarily understand, and I want you to maybe do it for me a little bit separately, but we're only including 5 people in the DIA staff count when we're doing this resource allocation. So that 5 does not include you specifically, correct? Because you have 6 people in the
Right,
department.
over here, but in the plan.
Right, so I just want you to bridge that a little bit better for me, because we're looking at resource allocation. I'm assuming you charge some of your time to the audits?
Actually, my time does not get charged to the audits.
So that would, I guess, formulate a little bit. So there's, in my mind, there's kind of excess hours then that are, and people that are being paid for by the county. Those hours are not included in the audit plan.
They are included in the audit plan.
Well, okay. But so then if they're included in the audit plan, then shouldn't a portion of those be included in the resource allocation?
It is. This is just a piece of how I've allocated it.
So I'm
The
just,
final is here.
I don't want to belabor it. I just want you to better explain to me how your audit, I don't want you to do it here, maybe it's another schedule or something along that line, but when I'm looking at a resource allocation of 5 people, which then means you have available project hours of 6,240, and then you're comparing it to these items in the audit plan, well, you're not there. So you're either you're not in the either you should be in the resource calculation, or they should be removed from the audit plan if you're doing something separately that's in the audit. to me, there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
So for consistency purposes, I'm doing it as was being done for the years in the prior in which I got here. So I didn't want to make any changes to what you were used to seeing. And the hours for the director have always been included over in this audit plan, total hours, as is on page 12 of 12, and it's broken out. It tells you the current engagements, which will match back to the current engagements here of 1,515 hours. The planned audit engagements of 7,000. We don't have to go into it, but this is how it is broken out, and I will be more than happy to meet with you. But the other thing I'd like to address or have addressed is the budgeting. So I don't do the budgeting by myself. The team definitely always has a say in this, and when they start audits, I always ask them to give me, if they think we need to revise the budget, they revise the budget. But I'm going to let the person who really manages that, I'm an oversight person, but I'm going to let him speak so that you can understand a little bit better what we go through.
Well, I guess when it comes to the budget versus actual and how we end up with discrepancies, a lot of times when we're entering into an engagement, we don't have, it's a best guess situation. We're thinking, okay, this particular test should take approximately 2 hours, and then we go through it, itemize it out, match it to the budget. If we need to revise, we revise. If we don't, then we try and stay in line with what was originally budgeted. Now, oftentimes, things take longer than what's anticipated. So additionally, if we end up finding significant number of findings, that drafting time really kind of extends out to what we usually think how long a report to draft should take. So as an example, one of our reports that you guys should be receiving soon has 14 findings. That took a lot of report time to kind of go through and draft those findings and work with the auditee on management responses.
Okay. I want to, we don't have time, so I need to put an end to the conversation. So if there's anything else that you want to communicate to the audit committee, just go ahead and shoot an email about whatever other else you would want to communicate. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for the sake of a motion to approve the plan, can I ask Monica which priority items you'd like us to approve?
So the plan as
Just the
separated
numbers on page
out.
10 and 12.
Yeah. So the plan is separated out here for you. I'm recommending deferment of the items in orange and in blue, so that the final plan is anything that is not being asked to be deferred, which is the orange and the blue. For total hours of the audit plan on page 12 of 12. So this would be the audit plan, and the audit plan report that I'm asking you to approve is 12 of 12 is adjusted hours of 9,200 hours, 9,201 to be exact, which includes 1,300 hours for the director.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the audit plan for 2024 to include priority items 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 11, 12, and 13.
The plan as a whole, Sal, it includes the engagements in progress as well. Okay, okay, just want to be clear.
So so we're approving this audit plan that Monica presented minus the items that are highlighted, right?
Correct.
So the actual audit plan for 2024 is this document less the highlighted items. All right? So all in favor of approving the 2024 audit plan, say aye.
I think we need a second.
Was there a second?
Second to Sal's motion.
All right, so all in favor of approving the audit plan, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. So, Monica, we have 10 minutes. So I don't know what you want to do in the 10 minutes. I know we have somebody here to talk about the grants, but I don't know where we are on the priority.
Well, the quality assessment updates were carried over from prior year, and it is a requirement by professional standards that we present those. If you're not going to come back after executive session, then I would request that those be looked at and considered so that we can get that ticked off from a peer review standards perspective.
Can you possibly get that through that in a couple of minutes instead of 10 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So the 2021 peer review was given to you in full for your review at your leisure. Key item from that is that what we just talked about, internal audit has completed all areas of recommendations except for that relative to the functional risk assessment and audit population because we don't have the resources to do such. The executive had some items that they have accepted accepted the risk on, and so those remain. And then for the audit committee, there is still the item, in particular, your audit committee charter as a recommendation that has not, it's at this point, it's management, it's the audit committee is accepting the risk because you've not made the recommended changes to your audit committee charter. So that's the one thing I wanted to point out for the audit committee. So that's the 2021 QAIP. Any questions? Okay, so for the 2023 QAIP assessment, the important thing here is every year we are required by professional standards to do our own internal assessment as to where we stand in compliance with professional standards. The key thing here is that if you look at it, we overall are at a partially conformed. The reason we are at a partially conformed is the access to records as well as the ability to audit without, on an independent basis without requesting and requests being denied. So that's what we're working on as it relates to the charter, and that is what has us at a partially conformed. Any questions?
Okay, so my question to you on this is, so of this, I don't want you to answer the question at this meeting, but at the next meeting, what is it on this document that it is that the audit committee should be focused on?
The charter. I just talked, your audit committee charter.
So of all these items, the only thing we have to worry about as a committee is the changing to the charter?
Well, that's your section, is the audit committee charter, yes.
But there's items in here that are not completed, correct?
Yeah, the only items that are not completed as it relates to the audit committee and the audit committee's oversight of us is what the items I just talked about. The inability for us to do the functional risk assessment or the functional, we cannot do that. And so that's where we stand with that. That's why it's not completed, because we cannot do it. And then when it comes to your area, it's the audit committee charter that I presented a revised charter templative form, and the audit committee has not reviewed their charter or made any changes as it relates to the recommendation.
What about things that you're responsible for doing that are not completed, that I guess?
That's the only thing that's not completed is the things we don't have resources for. We've completed everything.
Okay, all right, then I'm not, then, if I understand it, I'm not gonna worry about it then.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so what's next? We got 5 minutes now. Talk about the grants real quick while we have a couple folks here.
Sure.
I can do it in like 2 minutes. So if you can, so this is actually more of a topic that I want to talk about, and so if you can pop up those couple of pages in the grant report, and then I'll start talking. So Internal Audit recently released a report on the grants, and on a couple of pages 14 and 15 primarily of the audit report, they identified a significant amount of grants, and 1,543 open grants, of which 1,270 had ending dates before 2023. So the way I kind of look at this from a risk perspective or a concern perspective potentially from the committee is, there's a big cleanup that the county has to do as it pertains to grants. And many of the grants that have ended, that have not necessarily been closed out, if that's the right terminology, is almost in excess of 1,000 grants. So, you know, is it as concerning as being behind on a cash reconciliation? You know, maybe not. But is there a potential risk to the county, financial risk to the county by having a lot of these grants expired but not necessarily closed out effectively? And closed out effectively, from my perspective, I mean, there's really a zero cash balance in the fund, right? They've gotten the grant, monies have been expended, monies have come in, cash balance is zero, you close it out, you go on to the next grant. But in this case, there's a significant number of these grants that have some semblance of a cash balance. So I did have an opportunity to have a conversation with Lee and Lennon and Monica about this. I got a little bit more comfortable, I guess, from looking at some of the reports. I kind of got into some detail of the reports, but I do think that there is still potential risk to the county by having a lot of these expired grants still open in the system. I know Lee and Lennon have a
One question. I just want to make sure I understand. Are these grants made by the county or received by the county?
Received by the county.
Received by, okay, that's what I assumed, but I want to be sure.
And I'll have Lennon go into the detail because he did the work of putting together the report. I just wanted to comment, Mike, as you know, we talked and we determined that the report that you received wasn't quite filtered, right? So it was just kind of like raw data. The raw data that you received showed that we had like 400 grants that had been, I guess, exceeded the amount of the grant award. So it had negative cash balances. After we reviewed the file that the audit committee had sent you, we determined that there were, like, I think 400 grants in total that actually had a balance of $7.5 million that appeared on initial, glance. It appeared that the grants were overexpended, but that wasn't correct either. So Lennon drilled down and found that there were approximately 40 grants that were 2018 and prior that had that appeared to have balances that were potentially where we could have potentially overspent the grant. We had to do more research. Of that total, it's like 2.4 million. What happens is we don't know for sure that the grants are actually closed. We have to research that a little further. And then we have to make sure that the grants, because the way it works is when we were researching it, that's why I said we have to research a little bit further. Some of the grants had activities where more than one activity code was established, and usually it's one activity per grant. There are some agencies that have, they set up grants with multiple activity codes, and they set up the revenue in one activity code, and they set up the programs that are funded by that revenue in different activity codes. So when you run the report, the grant, that particular activity code appears to be overspent, but it's not because the revenue is in one place, and so we have to do that kind of matchup. We also have to reach out to the departments to find out if the grant has actually closed, because like a lot of the HUD grants that we have, they're 5-year grants. So, when we looked at the grants, some of the grants that appears to be closed, they're not actually closed. We still have activity in 2023. And then I'll let Lennon explain a little bit more in detail because he actually did the legwork of the report. Is there anything else that you want to add? And I'll send you, and if the audit committee wants this information as well, but Mike, I'll send you a follow-up. We want to have the grants 2018 and prior. We want to have that identified with a true balance by the end of April. Of the 108 grants that look like they have potentially negative balances, we plan to have that corrected and reviewed by third quarter. I'm sorry, second quarter. Yeah, in third quarter, just because we're working on the audit. And we might need a little bit more time to review it due to the population size. Did you want to add anything else, Lennon?
I think we covered the the first 2 points, so I think this is the third point.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
Lee covered most of the issues that we have with the grants and our current status. The one item that she didn't mention that's an issue here as well is just the timing of the grant status and process. Most of our grants are reimbursable. So the county has to spend the funds, or the agency spends funds prior to getting the reimbursement. So that could look like a grant is overspent if the monies have been paid out, and this is using operating funds to get the grant started. Then on a quarterly basis, for example, they'll submit reimbursements to the funder to get those funds back. So that could be a part of what's making it look like we have a lot of grants that are negative balances. I think it's just timing of drawing down those funds.
That's what the assumption, that the grant is still open and you can
If it's
draw the
open.
funds down, right?
If it's
Which
open,
the
right.
concern I have is the grants, you can't draw them down anymore because it's expired and money's gone away and your funding source is not available. So it sounds to me like you have a pretty good plan of attack, and maybe by the second or third quarter of this year, you'll hopefully have this cleaned up, and then maybe internal audit through their follow-up process can review that work and then come back to the audit committee through your follow-up process, or somebody can.
Yeah, we definitely will, because these were the findings that we had, was that they needed to clean up the grants database. That was one of the findings. And the other finding was that oversight needed to be done by the fiscal office. So I think the recommendations made address very much what they're doing. So
Have we
definitely will follow.
have we quantified the impact? I know that we, in terms of volume, but what about the number?
Yeah, so on our, so that's the numbers that I gave initially, that it appears to be, when you initially look at it, appears to, the population size is about 108 grants that total $7.5 million. But that's the one that we're not sure of the actual population size. We looked, we diced it two ways. Of the 7.5 million, approximately 5 million of those are still what we consider active grants, which means there's still grant activities, they're still within the grant period, et cetera, et cetera. So, so for example, if there's a HUD grant that was established in 2019 or 2020, that grant is for a 5-year period, it's not closed, it may, so at the time that they pulled their sample report, the grant, it could be a timing difference too, because it's not closed of when the reimbursement occurs. Correct, that we're looking into.
Better, but still a potential burden. So,
Yeah.
so we can, as we're doing the agenda for the next meeting, we can decide if there's been enough progress to keep it, so I want to keep this as either potentially as an agenda item, or I know that it's through the follow-up, but I don't want to lose sight of this through the.
We definitely will do it through the follow-up. It will be part of our follow-up process.
All right. Good luck. It's another cleanup, and and I know it's something else that you guys kind of absorb through the transition. So.
And we also kind of addressed monitoring and closeouts in the grant policy that we're drafting up. So hopefully the grant policy will be completed. The target date is April 30th. We made a significant amount of progress on that. So procedures will be distributed to Cuyahoga County to describe how you're supposed to close out grants. So hopefully we won't have like open grants with negative cash balances going forward.
All right, any other questions for Lee or nothing? Okay, all right, thank you so much. All right, so I want to bounce around the agenda. I want to go back into I want to go back to item 8 and then go into executive session. So all meetings of the Cuyahoga County Audit Committee are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meetings Act. However, the committee may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, the committee confers outside of the hearing of the public, but may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All final decisions are made in public. So the committee will go into executive session for the purposes of considering the employment and appointment of a public official, public employee or official. So I guess we need a motion, a second, and then a roll call. Okay. I think that,
Okay, calling roll, Michael Abuzarol.
yes?
Okay, Trevor McLear. Salvador Talarico.
Yes.
Keith Lippman. And Meltree Sharp. Okay.
Okay, so if I can ask everybody on the audit committee who's around the table and Sarah to stay in executive session. I think we need to try, thank you very much. Nice seeing you again. Okay, all right. Are we good logistically?
Yes.
Okay, so we are reconvening the meeting of the committee, and we are now back on the record. So I think a couple of logistical items first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised performance evaluation for the director, and then also have Mark issue the responses to the questions that the director asked. Or am I doing that? I apologize. Oh, right here, okay, all right. Issue responses to the questions received from the evaluation.
What do I need to do? I think Monica usually signs it first.
So you want a second?
Second. So all in favor of approving the revised evaluation and the responses to the questions raised by the director, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Who signs that evaluation first, you or me? I think you do
I
first.
don't remember.
I think you do first, and then I sign it, and then if Monica doesn't sign it, then I just sign it, and then.
We just sign it as, that's.
You want me to sign it right now? Okay, all right. Okay, that was one item.
Mr. Chairman, I move to extend the previously approved remote work policy accommodation until the next meeting of the audit committee, and delegate to the HR director the administration of the matter.
Second.
So all in favor of approving the motion as read by Keith, say aye.
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 Opposed, okay, great. So what do you want to go back to on the,
Thank you, Chair. It was agenda item where we approved the 2024 goals. I do believe that that was motioned by Michael Chambers, who is unfortunately not able to motion for such. So we need that to be redone.
so we need a motion to approve the 2024 goals as presented by the director?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the 2024 goals as provided by the director, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. Okay, so there's 3 items on the agenda that we didn't get to. The semi-annual issue tracker, the update on the current audit engagements, and then the current and emerging risks. Audit committee, you have time? Do you want to go through any of these items before we adjourn, or already half hour?
I will leave that. What would you like them to go over for you?
Can everybody stay?
Semi-annual.
What about emerging, I mean, I feel like anything that's labeled as emerging risks is probably the most important one, but you guys.
Yeah, this was just an item to allow the audit committee to know that we had added value to the process in terms of us monitoring. Part of my job is to manage and monitor emergent risk, and so in doing that, I identified an area from a benefits perspective, HR benefits perspective, and brought that to the attention of HR, and they were able to resolve a potential compliance concern. Relative to that, there are some additional audit risks that I brought up to them, and management will, manage those risks as they deem necessary, but the risk that was brought up to them was relative to compliance with the Affordable Care Act. Thank you, Affordable Care Act, and they were able to to rescind the benefit start date and revise that in order to comply with the Affordable Care Act. So just wanted to give you a report on where we're monitoring those risks in real time and adding value or benefit as it relates to the process. So it's not just audits, but actually preventative.
Monica, what are the additional risks just that you brought to their attention?
Some of the additional risk was pharmacy, the risk of increased medical expenses as we are self-insured as it relates to the increased costs based upon the potential that there may be pharmacy deserts created and henceforth people not appropriately and timely taking medicines, which impacts the overall medical history or claims history that we'll have, which will increase our risk. That was one of those. And yeah, so the access, of course, from an employee perspective, the less benefits you provide or the less employees view those benefits to be beneficial, of course, that impacts our overall hiring retention ability as well.
Okay. Any other questions on that topic?
I'm sorry, so this was a suggestion to provide additional benefits than that which were currently being provided?
Actually, it was a restriction on benefits that were currently being provided. So they were restricting pharmacy benefits to one provider only. So whereas currently, prior to that, the date, has it happened, April, I think, you were able to get your prescriptions filled at any local pharmacy, and they changed that benefit to be more restrictive to just one particular provider. In doing that, the time frame in which they originally issued it might have been a compliance issue for us, so they revised the issuance.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thank you. You want to do the ITGC risk assessment update?
Yes, so the ITGC risk assessment update, we are thankfully able to say we just finally got the contract approved, right? All done. And so we are going to be back at engaged in the process. I am working on finalizing the risk inventory for them. I hope to have that done within the next week, if I can, so that they can get to doing what they need to do. This was supposed to be an outsource, and it wound up being a co-source because of some differences in knowledge base. So again, working to get that done, but it's back on track now. We are actually have the dollars in the budget and can actually move forward with this engagement.
So where does this project stand?
So it was pretty much on hold until we got the contract approved. So now the contract's approved, we're re-engaging the vendor. We'll be providing them with our updated review of their risk inventory with our edits, i.e. my revisions. And then we will be setting new project timelines and dates. We believe that this project should be done by June 30th.
Any questions on that project? Any other current audit engagements that you want to update the audit committee on?
Josh?
I mean, they're all moving forward as shown in that update document. If there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. I don't think so. All right, you want to since everybody's still here, I guess, you want to do a quick update on the semi-annual issue tracker?
Yeah, let me bring it up. All right, so it is 9-page summary. The first table just shows a history of our audit reports. We did add the issue date in there so that you can kind of see them in chronological order. Gives, I guess, a better idea of how they're dating out in remediation. So the first set of columns just shows the total remediation or recommendation counts within the report. The second set of columns shows how many are still open as of now. So as of year end of 2023, there is a total of 220 recommendations open, of which I believe, if you go to the next page, it shows how many were added during the second half of 2023. So in the second half of 2023, with the audits released, we added 122 recommendations to that list. Page 4. Page 4 just shows the testing completed during the second half of the year. So, 7/1 through 12/31. We completed testing on 73 total recommendations, of which, 57 of them were fully completed. 7 of them are actually listed as risk accepted. Now, take note, a few of those are actually recommendations that when the audit report was initially released, management right up front said we're accepting risk. So we're kind of just closing them out right out the gate.
Yes, just a philosophical question on that. So, and this may be more to the audit committee. So the recommendations where management has decided that they want to accept the risk and internal audit is considering those to be closed, is that, are we okay with that?
I mean, is it acceptable?
I'm assuming it's management, and that's why I'm asking the question. I mean, it's just a kind of a.
So it seems to me that in an ideal world, we'd have the resources to go back in and review whether management, in effect, did remediate those risks or follow recommendations. That would be best practices, and I could be wrong, but I think I remember some element of that happening in years past. But being realistic, going back to all the discussions we had earlier today about resource constraints, I wouldn't be in favor of taking resources away from current high-risk audits to revisit recommendations and management's performance of their acceptances. To me, that's a risk priority. We need to move forward.
Well, and I get that part of it, but I guess, I mean, we review the reports, right? And we kind of give the okay for the reports to go out, and which means we're also supporting the recommendations that go out. I'm assuming the recommendations have validity and merit, right? That's why they're actually in the report. So they go to the department says, I don't know who has to approve it other than the department, by the way. County executive has to approve it, but they're saying, well, we're not going to do anything with the recommendation. We're going to accept the risk. Are we comfortable with that? Do we want to have, I mean, I'm assuming the detail behind these are all in your database, which.
Correct.
Spend time going through them. I guess we could spend time individually, but as a committee, do we want to consider that as an agenda topic? I don't know. It's always been an issue for me, I guess.
Well,
Now,
let me modify my answer, because I thought we were talking about management agreeing they would make the remediation on that, which is they're just accepting the risk. I'm not sure where we would go with it as a committee. I think that may go in a report to the county executive, or somebody of that ilk, to decide whether those managers are accepting acceptable risks or not. So no, I don't think we should just let it lay. I think it needs to be reported to a higher level of management.
Do you, when you do your year-end reporting, do you report those to the county executive?
we do. So I guess we're talking about two different things here. So one is when the report is first released and they're saying we're accepting this risk. Well, yeah, that obviously, that does go to the executive. I mean, it goes to the audit committee who the executive sits on. So they are aware of that. Now, if we perform remediation testing, and management kind of changes from, yeah, we were gonna address that, to no, now we're just accepting the risk, that definitely gets reported to the executive level. So we do have a year-end agency memo where that goes up. Anything that we've tested that is not resolved, or partially resolved, or risk accepted, gets reported within that.
So at least it's getting in that, from that perspective, but I don't know if there's a need for us to have to, you know, out of curiosity, what are these 7 items, you know, how important are they to us, and should we be?
Yeah, that's what I was actually gonna get to, is the level of risk that this presents to the organization. Do you, I don't believe that these were high-risk items. And there were also items that, I don't think we had an issue with the risk acceptance.
No, I mean, like, as an example, 4 of them are from the recruitment, hiring, and retention engagement. So, I mean, that was basically all performance, and, you know, that's looking at what the county can do to help retain their employees. I believe one of the recommendations was a best practice of, you know, implementing in-house daycare. Well, you know, that's not really gonna affect operations. They said, no, we can't do that at this time. You know, we're saying, okay, we label it as risk accepted, because that's just kind of our categories. It's not necessarily a risk, that was more of a, you know, recommended best practice for recruitment and retention.
So maybe the solution on this one, with all the work that's currently being done, is if internal audit feels that management's accepting the risk, but maybe they shouldn't,
We always bring that up
Yeah,
to
we
a
always
higher,
bring it
we'll,
up to
we'll
you.
escalate that.
as a,
if need
how,
be.
how would you do that? That's what I want you to, but how would you?
Process.
Okay,
Well, that, and even like during the engagement, we would, you know, escalate it up if we felt that, I guess at the report level, if they say management's accepting risk, then we
Right,
would
but if
escalate
they-
it at that point. Even during remediation, we've done that too.
Right. So even if if it doesn't happen during the report cycle, certainly during the report cycle, we report it out to you. But if it doesn't happen, let's say they agree to do something, and then later they say, you know what, we can't, we're gonna accept the risk. If it's an issue or a situation, we would bring it up to you either at this time, or if it's significant at a meeting, we would definitely bring it up. Anytime management is accepting risk, anytime that management is accepting risk that we disagree with, or we think is at a level in which the risk needs to be evaluated at a higher, we definitely would bring it up to this committee.
and
we've done that.
That's a good solution. I think that's an okay solution, okay. And then if they're withdrawn, that means you guys have decided to, or, well, you tell me what that means.
There was, basically, it means that there was some kind of change that means that the recommendation is no longer necessary. So as an example, I believe in the Children and Family Services, one of them was a matter of reviewing entries from, they had 2 systems that they basically have to put the same information into. And the recommendation was, you know, you need to make sure that the 2 sets of entries match. Well, they stopped using 2 systems. They went down to 1. So with that, thus, the recommendation is no longer valid, and we don't need to go any farther.
So if it's in the withdrawn column, you guys are in agreement that the recommendation maybe isn't relevant anymore.
Correct.
But it's your judgment, it's not the department's
Correct.
judgment necessarily. Okay. Okay. All right, good.
That would be it.
Oh.
That's the update?
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I kind of forgot we were going through this report. So, all right, so, yeah, so that was page 4, talking about fully resolved versus withdrawn and risk accepted. Page 5 kind of shows the testing that we performed in the second half of the year, where we had results where we did the testing, but the results came back not resolved or partially resolved. So either they didn't take the appropriate action, or they're still moving towards it. With that, there was 32. Those stay on our radar. They stay on our issue tracker. We follow up at a later point in time. So page 6, it kind of gives a year-end status of everything overall. So In the end, we closed, again, 73 open recommendations. They're broken down by risk level there, high, moderate, or low. Now that leaves, that brings us down to the open issues on the next page 7. There are a grand total of 220 as of year end. Now, like I said, 122 of those were added during the second half of that year. So we will be going in to follow up on those. Of the 220, it kind of breaks it down into the status as to where it is. So of the 220, 12 of them, we had previously marked them as requiring IT consulting services. Well, we've lost budget for IT services. So we're going to reassess those and evaluate if we can do the testing in-house with our current resource, knowledge and skills.
So can I ask one question on this one?
Sure.
So like the accounts payable Benford's Law, so there's 5 high ones that are still open.
Yes.
So since that report's released, you've gone in and have done so you've done follow-up work
We've
on
done
the
follow-up
Benford.
work. Yeah. Some of them multiple times.
Multiple, okay. And so even after all the follow-up work, there's still 5 remaining from the Benford, from the
Correct.
accounts payable that are still in a high category, right? That's how I interpret this? Okay.
So let's see, that puts us on, page 8. This is kind of the status of the 220. We just talked about the 12 that we had previously determined, should have IT services, but we'll reassess that due to the loss of IT service funds. 25 of them we were scheduled to complete testing in 2023. That didn't quite happen by year end. So we just rolled that over into the first quarter of 2024. They're now all testing completed. And they'll be part of the 2024 reporting.
So Mike, I just want to bring attention to what you just talked about in terms of the 5 for Benford's Law. 2 of those are rollover testing, so they're currently being tested, but then 3 of them are pending detailed testing scheduled for future years. So not in our current testing population.
Okay.
Is that correct?
I'd have to look at the.
Okay. But I get the concept, just, okay. I get it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, any questions? A lot of data here. Just out of curiosity, so you got about 1,000 hours for this in 2024. How many hours you remember how many hours you had in the audit plan for 2023 for this issue tracker?
Oh, yeah, it's on the BBA.
It was, I believe, 800 or 850, somewhere in there I'd have to pull that up.
And how about the year before that? I'm trying to figure out the incremental increase without
So if
Catherine.
you remember, the year before that, we were just starting. This is a new process that started since I was here, and we implemented that process in 22.
Okay, so the impact of Catherine not being here impacts the audit plan by about how many hours? 200
Yeah,
hours.
looks like it increased from 800 on the 23 plan to 1,050 in the.
Any other questions on the issue tracker? All right. So public comment unrelated to the agenda, obviously not. So our next meeting is Thursday, June 13th, 2024. Hopefully everybody can make it. Or actually, we have a couple of meetings before that, but next official meeting is June 13th, and we need a motion to adjourn, or do we just adjourn? I can never remember. Need a motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning? Opposed? Aye. Just kidding. Aye. All right, thanks, everybody.
Tom. Yeah, Tom actually has some.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
No, I walk over from Tri-C, so. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye, have a good week.